behind why.
Yeah, I knew this would be a big outlier, and I did this on purpose because the more that I dug into my Eagles projections, the more that I thought that Zach Ertz was super overrated. So you have Travis Kelce at the top. You know, he plays in the NFL's highest scoring offense with Tyreek Hill possibly out for some time. And then George Kittle with the 49ers, where their projected number one wide receiver, Dante Pettis, has 27 career catches. And their projected number two, Deebo Samuel, has 0 career catches. He's a rookie. And with all the weapons that the Eagles have, man, Alshon Jeffrey, Deshaun Jackson, Nelson Aguilar, Miles Sanders, Jordan Howard, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, and then Dallas Goedert, who could legitimately cut into Ertz's snaps. I think that we're going to see Zach Ertz take a step back. Last year was a career year for Zach Ertz. He set career high for targets by a margin of 44. His targets last year were a career high by 44. His catches were a career high by 38. So he's a guy that I'm proactively bumping down because I don't want him myself, and I don't want my readers to draft him either.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this Eagles offense is absolutely loaded, and Ertz is kind of a guy that needs volume. I mean, his yards per target were not that great because so many of his catches came near the line of scrimmage. His ADOT was very, very low. All right, let's move to the Seahawks run game. I want to talk about Chris Carson. Evan has him 41st overall in his top 150. Chris Carson's ADP is 57.8. Now, we know, Evan, that the Seahawks are firmly on team established the run. So we would suspect that there's going to be a lot of opportunities for this backfield, but there has been some Rashad Penny buzz. I think a lot of people in the draftnik community felt really good about Rashad Penny coming out of school last year, had a disastrous rookie year. Is this Chris Carson ranking a nod that you think Rashad Penny may never be good in the NFL or may never cut into Chris Carson, or are there just so many carries to go around here that Chris Carson can still get enough opportunity?
No, I'm actually a Rashad Penny fan. I'm not sure what the world is missing with Chris Carson, though, because the dude is really freaking good. He's 6 foot 218. He's built to be a feature back. He reminds me a lot of DeMarco Murray in DeMarco Murray's prime with the Cowboys. He's kind of like that upright, big physical runner. Chris Carson finished top 5 in the NFL in rushing yards last year, and he was top 5 in average yards after first contact last season. That's a statistic that Hermsmeyer and Mike Clay have shown as like a really sticky statistic for running backs year over year. Chris Carson's the lead back on the run heaviest team in the NFC. So yeah, I feel real comfortable being above ADP on a player like that. People want to talk about Rashad Penny. And again, I really liked him coming out of college, and he definitely deserves more work. But one thing that they're overlooking is the fact that Mike Davis is gone. And I know that Mike Davis is not, he's not a household name. No one gets excited when they hear Mike Davis. This dude had 146 touches last year in 15 games. Okay, that's almost 10 touches a game. So we're pulling that out of the run heaviest team in the NFC. There's a ton of opportunity for these running backs in Seattle because they run so much. So I think that Chris Carson and Rashad Penny can actually both be weekly fantasy starters. Last year, Seahawks running backs averaged 33 touches per game. And I don't think it's crazy at all to think that Chris Carson could get 18 a game and Rashad Penny could get 13 a game. And Chris Carson can be a fringe RB1 and Rashad Penny can be a pretty good flex play week to week.
Yeah. Chris Carson in short yardage is fun to watch too, man. The dude is he's definitely #good. Yeah. Okay. Moving to the next one. And this is one that surprised me. And I've heard you talk about this guy a few times. And it's Latavius Murray. Evan Silva, 50th in the top 150. Average draft position of Latavius Murray right now is 75th. And I think one of the biggest questions maybe in both season long and DFS is, did Mark Ingram siphon off so much of Alvin Kamara's work because Mark Ingram is good, or is it because that's the way Sean Payton wants to play? Like, in other words, if we think Latavius is a worse player than Mark Ingram, and maybe we disagree here, I think Mark Ingram's pretty good and Latavius is just okay, but are we sure that Latavius will go fully into the Mark Ingram role, or will they give a little bit more to Alvin Kamara because, quite frankly, Latavius is not as good as Mark Ingram? I know I said a lot there, Evan, but you are way higher than market on Latavius Murray.
Yeah, so this is another player that I'm not really sure like what people are missing on him, because Latavius Murray, I think, is jumping. And I agree with you that he's probably a little downgrade in terms of talent from Mark Ingram, but he's jumping right into that role at worst. Last year, that was 13 touches per game. The year before, that was 18 touches per game. And Latavius Murray has the most carries inside the 10-yard line in the NFL over the last 3 seasons. He has 53. Multiple coaching staffs have identified him at, 6'2", 230 pounds as a guy that they want to give the rock to on the goal line.
Mm-hmm.
And if Alvin Kamara goes down, Latavius Murray is an RB1. And going from running behind the Vikings offensive line to the Saints offensive line is one hell of an upgrade. I mean, you're going from a bottom 5 offensive line to a top 3 offensive line. And, this year I went to the combine and, it was about 2-3 a.m. And this guy looking up, he rolls up, he looks like Malcolm in the Middle a little bit. Well, it's Sean Payton. Okay. So, I started quizzing him on everything. And, I asked him about Alvin Kamara. I was like, your offense functioned at the best possible level when you were featuring Alvin Kamara, in those first 4 games.
Right.
And I was like, why don't you do that? Just go all in on Alvin Kamara. And Mr. Payton looked at me in the eyes and he said, Alvin's soft.
Oh, no.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Yeah, you might want to take this out. No, he did. I mean, look, and I think that he was, again, it was late at night for him too. But I think he just kind of realizes that Alvin Kamara is not a guy that you want to give the ball. Like they're a Super Bowl contender, And
Definitely.
I think that Latavius Murray is going to get a lot more work than people anticipate. There's another situation though where, I have him at number 50 and his ADP is number 75, and I often see him go later than that ADP. So he's another guy that you want to kind of slow play it. You don't necessarily need to draft him at number 50. Like, don't draft him at number 50 overall. But you start to get to like number 65. Now we're talking really good RB3/flex option that I think is going to be usable all season long.
Yeah. I guess the one thing that sticks in my head, and maybe a drunken Sean Payton is right, but like last year, weeks 1 through 4, the Saints didn't feel a need to have somebody in the Mark Ingram role, and I know that's not sustainable for the whole year, but we'll see. I'm not sure that Latavius is going to get the full Mark Ingram role, but if he does, Latavius is just for sure a value. Let's move to Miles Sanders. This is an interesting one. Evan has him 60th in his top 150. Miles Sanders' current ADP is 81.9. I really like Miles Sanders, man. I did that study about elite measurables, what an elite fantasy running back looks like over the last 4 seasons, and Miles Sanders met all 6 of the athletic thresholds. I mean, maybe that's not impressive because everybody from Penn State meets all 6 thresholds. It's like the best weight room in the entire country. But anyways, I digress. But anyways, Howie Roseman, I was impressed with what he said after the pick. He said the coaching staff loved Miles Sanders. The scouts loved Miles Sanders. The analytics guys loved Miles Sanders. And the Eagles are not one to take running backs early. They have not done it at all, I believe, since like maybe 2013 or 2012 or something crazy like that, since they've used a top 3 round pick on a running back. So I think they're high on Miles Sanders. The problem is, Evan, Miles Sanders missed the entire spring due to a hamstring injury. Corey Clement is back healthy and being talked up in the pass game role. Do you have any concerns about opportunities, particularly early in the season, for Miles Sanders?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely do. And as you mentioned, his ADP took a real big hit because of that hamstring injury. He just missed minicamp with a hamstring.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what does that really mean in the big? Like, I didn't move him at all.
Mm-hmm.
Down my rankings. I was listening to a Dynasty show the other day with Ryan McDowell, who's like one of the OGs in Dynasty fantasy football analysis, and he was talking about how Miles Sanders went from a guy that was like a near consensus number 4 overall Dynasty rookie pick to, if you're doing rookie drafts like around this time, you could get him at like 1.08 or 1.09, and that's a really big shift in Dynasty rookie ADP.
Mm-hmm.
And look, if he begins the training camp on the active PUP list, that's going to be a red flag. And I may have to move him down at that point. But I think that people just want reasons to be scared with Miles Sanders because they look at the Eagles' history of using committees under Doug Peterson. What they fail to realize is that Doug Peterson has been working with garbage at running back since he took over as the head coach. I mean, Wendell Smallwood, Corey Clement undrafted,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're trotting out, the corpse of Darren Sproles. And look, Miles Sanders is not perfect. He was a one-year starter at Penn State. He fumbled too much. That's a really big concern. If he starts fumbling again, that could be a problem. But his upside is I think better than people are giving it credit for. This is an unbelievably talented Eagles offense. They're so loaded on the offensive line that they traded up to get a left tackle, and he ain't even going to start for them. Okay. And I really liked Miles Sanders before the draft. I thought he was kind of like a souped up Devontae Freeman. You look at the running backs that when the Eagles have kind of settled on a back, Jay Ajayi got 14.4 touches per game over his last 10 games with the Eagles. I could really work with that for Miles Sanders. You give me 14.4 touches per game, doesn't have to start in week 1. Let's say by week 5, he's getting 14 and a half touches per game. I can work with that in this offense. And I think he can get there. I just think he's so much more talented than Jordan Howard and Corey Clement and Wendell Smallwood and, the kid from Notre Dame that they played last year a little bit. Miles Sanders is a baller, dude.
Yeah. By the way, I just finished editing and reading and posting Evan's Dynasty rookie rankings, which were 7,200 words of Dynasty rookie rankings. And so profiles on every single rookie, even undrafted guys Evan has done. You can check that out too. It's in the draft kit. Okay, this next one was probably the most surprising one to me. Evan has Carlos Hyde 78th in his top 150, 78th overall in his top 150. Carlos Hyde's ADP is a 120.8. I think Damian Williams will maintain control of this job. Carlos Hyde is on his 4th team in the last 2.5 years or so. The 49ers, obviously the Browns, the Jaguars, now the Chiefs. He's almost 29 years old. Are you suggesting that Carlos Hyde has a chance to siphon off and turn this into a committee with Damian Williams? Evan, is that why we have him at 78th overall?
So I want to be clear that I am ahead of ADP on every single Chiefs player except for Patrick Mahomes and Sammy Watkins. Mm-hmm. I'm ahead of ADP on Damian Williams. I have him as my RB12. I have him like as a 2nd/3rd round pick. If you're using the cheat sheet, like you're going to get Damian Williams in all likelihood. I'm ahead of ADP here on Carlos Hyde. I'm ahead of ADP on Travis Kelce. I'm ahead of ADP on Demarcus Robinson. Mm-hmm. I absolutely believe in the offense. It's just that, but this one, it's probably the least confident one that I have. I should probably just move him down just out of necessity because the gap here is so big. What's 121 minus 78? That's
yeah, like 43. Yeah, like 43 right. spots. Yeah,
so I got to move him down. Honestly, I got to move him down, and I will. But I'm comfortable being aggressive about dudes in this offense. I think that there's a chance that he gets 10 to 12 touches per game and maybe goal line carries. There's also a chance that Damian Williams gets hurt or flops. Damian Williams was a part-time back at Oklahoma. He goes undrafted. He's been in the NFL for 5 years, and he's never had more than 50 carries in a season. Think about that for a second.
Yeah. I mean,
for 5 years, never had more than 50 carries.
I hate to let him off the hook, but man, this Dolphins organization and coaching and scheme has been so bad, and he was kind of buried there, but I hear you. It's a concern.
And another guy that's kind of interesting late is Darwin Thompson, who they drafted, and they actually signed James Williams as an undrafted free agent out of Oklahoma State. He was a Mike Leach back, and they cut him already. So Darwin Thompson is like almost locked into that number 3 running back role. He's a small dude, but he was a tackle breaker in college. And he kind of reminds me of Dion Lewis. He's a really interesting guy. I kind of forced him into my top 150 because I wanted to make sure that he's on people's radars, and he's certainly on my radar.
Yeah, Andy Reid does have a long history of utilizing his RB1 pretty consistently. I think that speaks well to Damian Williams, who they've said will go into camp and go into season as the starter, but we'll see. Speaking of camp competitions, Evan has Dante Moncrief 92nd overall in his top 150. Dante Moncrief's ADP is 120.9. I also want to be high on Dante Moncrief. I remember doing like a podcast with Kay Adams, who knows how long ago, like 6 years ago or something. I kept talking about Dante Moncrief when he was on the Colts. I mean, the dude is for sure athletically gifted. He will head to camp, it sounds like, ahead of James Washington, ahead of Deontay Johnson.